Welcome to The Third Chair, a show about real people, real stories, real life. And here are your hosts for The Third Chair, Peter Grigg and Doug Bazeski.
Doug, you know who's on the show tonight?
I never know who's on the show tonight.
Oh, you do so. You get the questions and you've done the research. But sometimes we change the guest.
That's right.
Well, we
what
have
questions?
we have a very interesting guest tonight. Someone who's very passionate about helping people, and another very multi-talented lady. She is an executive director of a local nonprofit, author of 2 books, and a national speaker. Please welcome Joni Shepherd. Welcome to The Third Chair with our special guest, Joni Shepherd. Thanks for being here, Joni.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Well, you wear many hats. Let's start with your author hat.
Okay.
I understand you've written a couple of books. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the first book that I wrote is called Why Can't We Say the A Word in Church? Overcoming Our Dirtiest Secret with Hope and Grace.
The A word. What A word would that be? Like, I can think of several that would not be allowed in church.
Yeah, that
I'm kind of nervous with that question.
does bring a few chuckles and questions, but it's the word abortion.
Abortion, okay. And so is this a research of the general area, or is this more personal stories, or what? Tell me about that book. What's that composed of?
Well, it's some of both. The book encompasses the scenario, the dilemma, and the remedy for overcoming abortion. So there's the scenario of, how many abortions happen in the United States, in the world, how many abortions happen among Christianity, and the effects of abortion, which is not discussed a whole lot. We talk about the death of babies, and that's what much of the pro-life movement is based on. But this book discusses mainly the effects that it has on the living victims.
Okay.
And then the dilemma of why it's so difficult to discuss in the church, and then the remedy for how we overcome that, because it's such a difficult subject that most pastors and most churches don't talk about it because they don't know how.
Sure, and then so I assume with the book you do some public speaking with that.
Certainly.
Do you bring copies of the book if you go?
I do.
Good. I think you should.
Yes.
No, that's wise. Do you self-publish the book?
It's published through Amazon.
It's Amazon. Okay.
And so it's self-published through them, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited, as well as for sale individually.
Now, is there so that's how people can buy it. Are there any graphic pictures in it or anything like
Absolutely
that?
not.
Okay,
yeah.
so there's nothing that if you're not from medical background you'd look at and it'd be shocking.
Correct, right. Because that's one of the things that trigger people who have had abortions, and it can be very, very difficult to view those pictures.
Boy, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a movie that came out, I think, in the early 80s called Silent Scream.
I do.
Yeah,
yes.
I was just wondering if they're pretty intense.
Right, very intense. And there is a purpose and a place for pictures and videos like that, but it's just not, it's you never know who you are with, who could be deeply affected by that, and even to the point of causing somebody to think suicidal thoughts.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that one of the horrible things is that it's not just women that might have suicidal thoughts. Anyone that was involved in the process, it seems, can be hurt or traumatized.
Correct. Yes.
How long did it take you to write the first book?
It took about 2 years for the bulk of it. And then when I was getting close to being done, my mom had a massive stroke.
Oh my God.
And so I was her main family caregiver. And so I, just kind of got delayed, and it was finally published about a year after that. So January 2019. Wow.
And then you did a follow-up book?
Well, what I did right before the A Word book was almost published, I had the idea that there are a lot of people that would rather just read the stories. And in Why Can't We Say the A Word in Church, it includes my story and different parts of my story, as well as stories of some other women, divided up in each chapter according to the subject that we're talking about. And so what I did was I extracted the story from Why Can't We Say the A Word in Church and put it in its own book, and I added a prologue, and an epilogue, and expounded on the stories a little bit more. But it's just about a 2-hour read for the second book, which is called Memoirs of a Christian Who Chose Abortion.
Wow. And I think you had mentioned to me one time that over 50% of abortions occur in people that profess believing the Christian faith.
Correct. Yes. When I was doing research for writing Why Can't We Say the A Word in Church, I discovered some studies that had been done. One that was done by Lifeway Research for CareNet, which is an organization that oversees thousands of pregnancy centers around the world. And they discovered in their study that nearly 70% of the women that they surveyed were Christians at the time of their first abortion.
Wow. And did that survey look at like how many people, how many women like came from a Christian home where there may have even been pressure by their parents, say, that sort of thing?
I don't think that study focused on the pressure by parents so much, but there are, and I should have brought a copy of this book also. There's a book called Complications: Abortion's Impact on Women. And it is based on a meta-analysis of over 650 worldwide studies on the effects of abortion on women. And so that's where I got a lot of the statistics for that book. And then there was another study that was done in 2016, I believe, by Guttmacher Institute. Alan Guttmacher was a former president of Planned Parenthood, and then just went into the survey and study business and conducts all kinds of studies worldwide regarding abortion. They had done a study in 2016 about they surveyed over 8,000 women at the time of their abortions, and one of the questions was, had to do with religious beliefs, and their study showed that 54% of women identified with the Christian faith at the time of their first abortion.
What was there any studies that looked at people and other religions, like Muslim, Islam, Buddhism? Was there anything there?
I'm sure that those studies, well, especially the one done by Guttmacher, did indicate other religions, but the overwhelming statistic to me from all of that is that Christians had the majority of them.
Right.
They had more than everybody else put together.
Okay. The do you have plans like for any follow-up books? Is there a different angle to this that you say, oh, I wish I'd talked about X, Y, or Z more? Any follow-up books in the planning?
Well, yes, I do have. Actually, I've just started working some ideas through for some curriculum for churches to use to help, starting with wee little tots, about the sanctity of human life and about our being created by God and the preciousness of human life, because that's something that's not focused on a lot. And so when a young woman is of childbearing age and suddenly she finds herself pregnant, and that's the first time she's ever thought about the sanctity of human life, it's too late.
Sure.
And so I feel like we need to have, why can't we say the A word in church book talks about how to overcome this in the church. And so I feel like we need more tools to how to overcome abortion in the church. And that's age related or age appropriate material to talk about why is human life so valuable? Why is it so important that we understand that we are made in the image of God? We're image bearers, and taking the life of another image bearer is never okay in God's eyes. And so, and progressing as with each age group, talking about it more in detail, and even I would say by middle school, actually talking about what is abortion and why is that so harmful.
I'm going to have you hold that thought while we go to a break. We'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I wanted to talk about your childhood. I understand that you were a missionary kid.
Yes, I was.
And what wonderful countries did you go to as a missionary kid?
Well, I started off my childhood in Guatemala. I was born there.
Oh, wow.
My parents were with
So
Wycliffe
young.
Bible. Yes, I was very young. I was conceived there and born there, as far as I know. And and then my parents finished the Bible translation in, I think, probably 1969. And
So they translated the whole Bible into another language?
it was actually just the New Testament
Just the
that
New
they
Testament?
did.
Wow. That's
Yes.
still a lot of...
That was a lot of work, and the village, or the language group, did not have a written language when my parents first went there. So they had to learn the language well enough so that they could put an alphabet to it and then start translating. And then they translated from Greek into the Mayan language, which was called Chuch, like the end of a sneeze.
Wow.
Chew.
Chuch.
Chew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Chew.
Chuch.
Ah, chew.
Wow.
Chuch.
That's a job I could never do.
Right. It takes a very dedicated, special kind of mind, I think, to do that. And I think at that time, my dad completed it in pretty much record time. I think it was just 8 or 9 years
Oh, wow.
work. So
So how old were you when you left Guatemala?
we left the summer I turned 9.
Oh, wow. So you were there that whole time?
Yes, we did travel to the States. We had,
This strange
trips
place.
there,
and,
yeah. But Guatemala was home because that's where I was born, and that's, that was the culture I grew up in. And so I'll always feel like I'm going back home.
So you've
there.
been back there since?
Yes, yeah. I did as a child and as an adult. And then after I graduated, well, not after I graduated, but when we moved back to the States, my dad he went back to school and got his master's and PhD in human behavior and became a counselor to missionaries. And so we traveled around the world while we lived in Guatemala, and around that time we also traveled into Honduras and El Salvador and Mexico. And then as an older teenager, my senior year of high school, we took a trip around the world and visited a whole bunch of different countries around the world where my dad did counseling and teaching.
So you were well traveled at 18.
I was. I used to tease my parents that they never took me anywhere. But I graduated from high school in Papua New Guinea, and that's where I met my husband, John.
Oh, wow.
Only we didn't get married until 2009. So that's when God brought us together.
Wow.
30 years after we originally met in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right? Yeah. Not too many people can say that.
No. That's pretty... So when you were growing up, did you ever live in the United States for a while, or?
Yeah, just for from age 9, it was about 1970, up through my junior year in high school, and then my senior year was when we took the whole year and traveled.
Oh, okay. So
around the world.
we
We were in the other 2 countries of California and Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are kind of different.
Yeah, they are
Took
different
you-
countries.
took you
Yeah,
a
those are
second.
kind of different countries.
Right.
Yeah, they're-
Totally different cultures.
I was going to say
So
California
were you able to
for
recognize
sure.
like some of the differences, like when you came to California, like, okay, this is a whole new. Did you go to California first, or?
Yes.
This is a whole new culture for me.
Oh yes, it was difficult to get used to the difference in just
Even
the
though you're only
worldview.
9 years old.
Yes. Just one of the things that I noticed right off the bat was waste. Americans waste food. We waste everything. We just use things and throw them away. And the Guatemalan national people would not do that. They would not waste one kernel of corn.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very different. And then when I was in middle school, I did feel very different than everybody else. It was like I knew I was different. I would observe people, and I was very shy at that time because I felt awkward. Like I don't really get these people, and I know they don't get me.
Mm.
Because then when you went to Texas, was it a whole different culture from like California? And,
It was. We had to learn the language,
Oh,
y'all come back now. You hear? It was a lot more laid back than California was.
Oh, California was
California
more
was
hyper than Texas. Wow.
Oh yeah, definitely. And having been raised by a psychologist, I'd gone from being in the 7th grade and being very shy and not very sure of myself. And so the summer between 7th and 8th grades was when we moved to Texas, and I made the decision, my own executive decision, that I'm going to be outgoing because nobody knows me.
That was a good decision.
I can be any way I want. And so, yeah.
Very good thinking.
It worked. It actually worked out really well. I forced myself to be outgoing. I forced myself to be the first one to introduce myself. And I became really good at it. I brought all the other kids in my circle together. There was a large group of MKs, missionary kids that lived in the Dallas area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would gather them for Bible studies, and, we'd go on outings, and I was kind of at the center of leading that, which was very different than me as a 12-year-old. And so it took me until it was probably maybe about 10 or 15 years ago that I realized, you know what? It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to not always be. No, it's not for you.
Peter has never learned that.
You've never learned that. We'll talk later.
Maybe when I sleep, that's about it. I'm very quiet when I sleep. If I wear my CPAP. Yeah.
There you go. But I realized, I projected that, and there was nothing wrong with that, but I'm truly an introvert, at heart. So
you like to recharge by yourself as opposed to with groups of people?
Yes.
A lot of people are like that, though, that, especially there's a lot of actors, they can go and be very, dramatic and do their thing, but when they're done, they want to be by themselves and that.
Right, yes.
So I'm the opposite, though. It's like when I need to recharge, I want to go down to the kickboxing gym with a lot of other people complaining and whining about the workout and sort of experience all that together.
Right, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable in both situations.
Yeah, the introvert type, but I was a military brat.
Oh, okay.
So, it's a lot of the same things. You went to a different school, and I was kind of filled it out the first few days. What is this school?
Right.
Where is it? Who's who in the school? Because
right.
you learn to do that because you're always going to a new place.
Yes, yes. So you have to.
So I understand where you were at.
Right.
But that was a good strategy. I wish I would have thought of it. Hey, nobody knows me, so I'm going to just
be whoever I want.
Yeah.
I've just figured out something we've done in terms of setting up our studio. We put the introverts on that side of the studio,
right,
the extroverts over here. But the guests can be either in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. And so on that note, we're going to go to a quick break and come back with more questions from Doug.
Okay.
We'll be ready. We sure hope you're enjoying this episode of The Third Chair.
Would you like to be a sponsor for The Third Chair?
We would love to have you join us to keep the show going and also help your business. Send us an email about your product or company and let's talk.
And follow us on social media.
Now back to The Third Chair.
Yes.
Hi, we're back with Joni Shepherd, and we were talking about the places that you lived as a kid and the different kind of environments that each one has. Or the culture is different, and one of the things you said, you went around the world as your senior year of high school.
That's correct.
So,
yes.
so how did you do school?
Well, I tried to do a little bit of correspondence along the way, but I kind of gave up on it because I just wanted to be able to enjoy where I was and get to know the people where I was. And we spent time in England, and Germany, Australia. When we were in Europe, we just took 6 weeks and just traveled
everything.
around, stayed
that
at
sounds
B&Bs, and it was the best education of my entire education, just getting to know
Oh yeah,
different
I bet
cultures
it's
around the
great.
world.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
when you travel, you learn a lot.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And then so how did you? And when you came back, you still hadn't completed your senior year, or did you?
No,
complete-
actually, in New Guinea, they're on the school there at the mission base there. They're on the Australian school system, which goes from February to November. And so for the American seniors who needed to get back to the States for college in the fall, they scrunched the whole senior year down to February to June.
Oh, okay.
So
you just
it was a
through
compacted
it.
school year, yes, and it was a quick senior year. It was a fascinating, amazing, and one of the most amazing years of my life. Just getting to know all the missionary kids that were there. And in my class, we had, I think, 24 kids in our class between Australians and Americans. And some of them were not, they were from other places as well.
So did you have some of the stuff like in the U.S., like a prom and things like that?
We had a banquet. I remember, John will remember more because he was there for more years than I was. But yeah, there was no actual prom, and I didn't miss it. I didn't miss that.
In Texas, they make a big deal out of it.
Yeah, they do. But again, I was a third culture kid. I didn't
Wherever
get
you
excited
were,
about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Wherever you were, that was well, that was fine with you,
That's
right?
what I did. Yeah, right. So, in fact, my parents gave me the choice if they wanted me to decide if we would take that trip when I was a senior in high school, or if they would wait until I was out of high school and let me graduate with my class. And I was like, no, let's go. That's awesome. Let's do it. And I never regretted it.
That's good. Understandable.
Right.
Sounded great.
Yes.
Did you ever go to boarding school?
I did in Guatemala, first through third grade. For me, it was cool. It was an awesome experience for the most part. I know that a lot of people struggled with that, but I had 2 older sisters who went before me, and so that's what the big kids do. So I got to be a big kid and go to boarding school, and I think a lot of it has to do with personality too. I was always more of a go with the flow type of person, and
As opposed to a rebel.
as opposed to a rebel, yes. My oldest sister, she was like the model child, never did anything wrong. That's what God does. He tricks us with the first child who's just, seemingly perfect, and then he gives you your next child, which is just, there's the rebel.
Our daughter, we had one kid, and she covered it all, so
Right.
So we saw all
Oh, your daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
So but it makes parents relax. So I think I had different parents than my oldest sister did, because they were much more relaxed by the time, they
They
realized
finally
that,
learned that the kid falls out of a tree to break their arm. It's no big deal.
right? Well, yeah, and I did fall out of a tree on my head, so that explains
Well,
a
you didn't
lot.
break your arm.
I didn't break my arm.
You've made a marvelous recovery.
Yes, thank you. I did fall out of the top bunk when I was 5. I begged my parents to let me sleep in the top bunk. You'll fall, they said. And I said, no, I won't fall. And of course, the big thud in the middle of the night, and I broke my collarbone.
Oh my goodness.
So you see, you did break some, but it
Right. But I didn't want them to know I hurt myself. So I was like, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
Until a nurse saw me
touched your collarbone
and saw me
and screamed.
holding my arm, and she's like, you might want to get that checked out. And so 3 days later, they took me
Wow,
for
so
an
you-
X-ray.
You could take a lot of pain, right?
Yeah, I was a good actress
Tough too.
because I didn't want to admit that they were right.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, your parents. You can't let them know that you lost.
No, they certainly cannot be right.
Well, I'm always curious when a parent is like a professional psychologist. Did you ever feel like you were being psychologically analyzed and like a dad was talking to you like a therapist or a counselor might talk to you?
No, not really. My dad was really down to earth, and both of my parents were, and they practiced what they preached. When my dad was in school for his master's and PhD, he would discuss things that he was learning
Mm-hmm.
with us, and we would kind of practice together. I mean, he would even let me be the counselor, and he would be the counselee, and we just had a lot of fun with it. We would take psychological tests together just for fun to see how they would turn out. And that was
So now you can beat all
It's
the
fun.
tests,
yeah.
I just like answer A on all of them,
Right.
and I don't
There you
even read
go.
the question. I've been being
They
a
just
schizophrenic
throw
a few
yours out
times.
here.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if I was ever diagnosed with anything serious, my dad never told me.
Oh, yes. Well, we had one guest on the show who's a PhD psychologist who once told an important family member in the heat of a discussion, you can either get better or bitter, and or stay bitter. And this psychologist realized after he said that he had made a mistake. I'm not sure what he got hit with, but
Oh, there was a wound, huh?
yeah, the idea is I think it's a real challenge for psychologists not to kind of do their natural thing on their family.
Yeah, I think that's true. Thankfully,
Yeah.
my dad had a great sense of humor,
Yeah.
and so, we would pretend sometimes. He pretended he was Jonathan Livingston Seagull one time, and I was counseling him and trying to understand why.
Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Haven't
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to have to, I am well read and I have that's not Dr. Livingston, I presume.
No,
No.
that was
Yeah,
I
I think
can't
it's-
even remember because I was about
Wasn't it the
10
bird?
or so.
The
I think so.
bird, yeah.
Or somebody who thought he was a bird. I don't know.
No,
Well,
I-
after our next break, we're going to find that out.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea. But he was, I learned a lot from my dad, just a lot about human nature. And one thing that he said used to make me really mad. You know what? You can choose to be happy. I'm like, I don't want to be happy.
Well, he was
You
right.
can't make me. You can't make me. I'm going to hold my breath.
Right.
But that made
Well,
you happy.
Yeah. Well, on that happy thought, we're going to go to a break and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Grigg, a life and recovery coach with Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching. I've had the pleasure and privilege of helping people for over 25 years. I want to hear your story, support and encourage you while we partner together to help you reach your goals. I can help you. I am certain I can help you. I can be your guide, role model, resource person, and help you get results. What's my coaching frameworks? I'm an eclectic coach drawing from a variety of disciplines and frameworks with evidence-based proven methods. What would you like to work on? Some popular areas are goal setting and attainment, building and maintaining motivation, finding purpose, personal development, recovery from drug and alcohol addiction problems, health and wellness, life planning, athletic and creative artist performance enhancement, maybe something else. Just ask me. I would love to help you. You can find my services on Fiverr.com. Welcome back to the third chair. And we're with our special guest, Joni Shepherd, and Jonathan
Livingston
Siegel.
Yeah, that was,
Writer,
he
wrote
was
a book about a bird.
No, he was the bird in the book.
Oh, he was the bird in the book, and then they
Yes.
made a movie about it, like a
don't
bird
see the movie.
flying
Whatever
around
you do,
for an
do
hour and
not
a
watch
half.
the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I
he
can summarize
laughs
the
once
entire
in a
movie
while.
like this.
That's the
Oh,
highlight.
God, there, you've seen the movie. Yeah.
that was about it. I think he lands once in a while. That's the highlights of the movie, the landings.
Wow.
So do
wow.
not see that movie because you just be bored out of your skull.
Well, and there it is.
The
a
book was
shameless
somewhat
plug for the movie.
Right, there you go.
Not a very good one.
Yeah. Not a high amount of stars.
No. I think they got a half a star out of 5. As opposed to our guest who's getting a 5 out of 5.
Well,
And
thank you.
We're going to ask you about you're an executive director of a nonprofit organization called Hope and Grace International.
Correct.
And I just want to point out that when you Google that, I found 2 different organizations with the same name, one serving people in Africa.
African children.
And
right.
that is not your group.
That is not.
Yeah, and so tell us about your organization.
Well, Hope and Grace International was born in 2016 after I had gone through a very, very traumatic employment experience. And it was traumatic because it was a Christian organization and I had a lot of people praying for me, and it was like, this is where God is leading me, and there I was, and then 2 weeks later there I wasn't. And I was so devastated by that. I had a friend I called who lives in Portland and just said, help me out here. I don't even know what to do. I don't feel like I can ever even work again. I was just so broken. And she told me, you need to dialogue journal with Jesus. And I'm like, what? And she said, you need to sit down with paper and pen and write your questions for God. And you need to sit there and listen and wait for him to answer. And so I did that. And I spent a lot of that time in the Word and just, what do you want me to do, Lord? Because I don't feel like I have the confidence to do anything. And through that time, he brought people into my life that encouraged me, and he just started downloading this vision into my mind about the lack in the way the church addresses abortion. And one of the phrases that came to me is that during that time is that by her silence, the church perpetuates abortion. Because if we're not talking about something, then it's easier to get away with doing it because nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about the effects of it. Nobody's talking about why you shouldn't do it. They just assume that you know. But because we're not talking about it in ways that people can relate to and understand and relate to their lives and being human, it makes it a lot easier to just, you get in a crisis pregnancy situation and no, you know, you're not going to go to your church about it because there's so much shame involved there. So you go to Planned Parenthood. And so I just began I started writing the book. I started it as classes, to give classes on it. And then it just kind of morphed into a book over time. And during that time, it was like, well, I need to start an organization because there's a lot of pro-life organizations out there, but the majority of them are fighting abortion in the world, not in the church. And then when I discovered the statistics that the majority of abortions are being done on women who identify with the Christian faith, it became all the more clear that it's not wrong to fight it out there in the world, but we can't really do that with integrity as long as we're ignoring our own part in it.
So when you say fight it out there in the world, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you mean like politically, legislatively,
right?
As opposed to the teachings and the actions of the church.
Exactly, and picketing clinics, and we're exposing the evil out there while we're hiding it among ourselves, and we don't even.
Some people might use the word hypocritical.
Yep, they might.
Yeah.
Actually, I use that word in my book.
Wow. So, yeah. So tell me then, something that the organization. So how, with respect to the organization, then is this an organization that, like, if someone is pregnant, can call you, or just how is the interaction between the organization and sort of the general public or members of a church? That dynamic.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
There are pregnancy centers in most major cities in the U.S. and a lot of places around the world, and they help women regardless of religion or race or any, in whatever their life situation is in those pregnancy situations. I feel that the church should be taking on part of that role. Hope and Grace International is not a pregnancy center, but we want to equip the church to become more involved in the lives of the community, including young men and women in their own congregations, starting with, we wouldn't even have the issue of abortion without immorality.
Mm-hmm.
It would be pretty much non-existent. There are people who are married who choose abortion, and that's, I think, happening more than it used to. Mm-hmm. But Hope and Grace International wants to equip the church to, let's talk about these things realistically. Let's not just tell kids, don't have sex before you're married. Let's talk about why and what happens. What are the consequences of that? What's the damage that's mm-hmm. caused by that? Because the root of abortion is sexual immorality. So you can't just fight abortion without mm-hmm. talking about how you get in that place to begin with. And the church is the only entity that can address it with redemption, with mm-hmm. hope.
Yeah, how does the hope and grace fit into it? Because, the fact is, you have lots of pregnant women in this country, and now they've got to carry on if they choose not to have an abortion. So how does the hope and grace fit into both that person, but also a lady that has decided to or has been pressured into having an abortion?
I think that the majority, and studies show this, the majority of women who have abortions do it because they're pressured or coerced or even forced into it. And so, and Christians are no different, because a lot of times Christian parents will pressure their daughters or their son's girlfriend to have an abortion, because it
To
just
save face for the
save
family.
face, yes.
For the family, not necessarily for the kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's shame involved in, if you are pregnant outside of marriage, well, guess what? Now everybody knows you've been sexually active, and we've got to hide that. And it kind of goes back to the story of David and Bathsheba in the Bible, where he does a shameful thing. He brings her to his palace and he has sex with her, and she turns up pregnant, and he's ashamed because even though he's the king, he shouldn't have been doing that. And so he covers up shame with something even more evil, or just as evil. And he murders Bathsheba's husband. And so abortion is very much like that in Christianity. We don't want to be real with each other that, okay, I've messed up here and I'm in this situation. And often the church treats unwed pregnancy like a sin. No pregnancy is a sin. It's a consequence sometimes of a sin. And so in order to avoid all that shame, it's much easier to just, let's just go over to Planned Parenthood and get this taken care of, and everything will be fine. And
but it's not.
It's not.
Let's hold that thought when we're going to wrap up this episode when we come right back. Hi, it's Peter from the set of The Third Chair. I just want to put in a good word for my good friend and owner of 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs, Melissa Lance. Her studios provide a phenomenal workout in 30 minutes. I know I've benefited from it over the last 2 years. I've lost over 30 pounds and really appreciate the encouragement, the excitement, the expertise of the trainers. It's a great workout. I encourage you to check it out. That's 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs.
Welcome back. Joni, we just got started on the support and issues you wanted to talk about, and so what we're going to do is invite you back for another episode next week.
Okay.
And but since we've been kind of heavy all this show, let's have some lighthearted moments, because I've been told you love puns and corny jokes.
Oh, I do.
Peter hates those.
Oh, I love them. I love them as well.
So
Yes.
give us one of your favorite jokes.
Well, how do you top a car?
How?
Tap on the brake, stupid.
That's good. Okay, you're not going to be outdone. So Joni goes into a bar and she looks up, and up in the sky are all these chunks of meat hanging from the ceiling. And the bartender comes to Joni and says, Joni, if you can leap up there and grab a steak, then you will have free drinks all night. But if you can't do it, if you can't take the bet, or if you lose the bet, then you have to buy everyone drinks all night. And Joni said, I just can't take the bet. And the bartender said, why not? And she said, The stakes are too high.
Oh, very good.
That was very punny.
Very,
Yes,
very funny.
yes.
Yeah. That's yeah. Did you hear why Joni stopped tap dancing?
No, why did you stop tap dancing?
She fell in the sink. Oh my goodness! All right, yeah, that's very, very bad.
Well, sometimes I cut my own bangs, and I think I do a bang up job.
There you go.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Yes, yeah. You heard that your husband invented a parachute.
No, I didn't.
There's only one problem with it. It opens on impact.
Oh,
A little bit of bad timing
that's
there.
one way, yeah.
This is really, really bad.
We've really gone downhill.
We've gone downhill. Yes. Yes.
But it will get better next week.
I sure hope so.
Oh my goodness! I'm still thinking of. Here's a really corny one. Why did the child strawberry cry?
Why?
Because her parents were in a jam.
Oh, poor
Jam,
little
yeah.
That's a very sad joke.
Yeah, it is a very sad joke.
Spread it around. I just made that one up.
Right, very good.
All right, well.
The only kind of jam I usually encounter is toe jam.
Oh, don't put that on your breakfast. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I think that we will call it a day for this episode. We will see you next week when we bring back Joni Shepherd. Thanks, everyone. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification.
This has been The Third Chair. Next week, we will continue our conversation with Joni Shepherd. Want to be a guest? Want to sponsor our show? Send us an email. Please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media.